guys, we just beat the game and we're gonna check out this feature now and see if it kind of explains the ending at all. Because I know initially when I clicked on it, it said it had spoilers and best to play first. So let's check it out.
Stormy seas and lost souls. She's dreamt of this before. It's coming.
Oh, it does explain things.
I mean, obviously, if they tell you to play the game first, it should.
Unless it's just because of the visuals are.
As seen by
Maybe, but...
What if each one of us is always dreaming, even when awake? And we only see what our inner eye creates for us.
Do you know how long it is?
I'm not sure.
Is this what hell is? A world shaped by Senua's nightmares. Maybe that's why people fear seeing the world through her eyes. Because if you believe that Senua's reality is twisted, you must accept that yours might be too.
Well.
Hellblade, Senua's sacrifice.
So this is more like a making of video. I thought it was going to be like a CG movie or something.
I don't know.
What sets our hero Senua apart is that she suffers from severe psychotic mental illness.
It's kind of like a behind-the-scenes sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which is cool, but not what I was expecting.
The original idea for Hellblade was to create a classic hero's journey.
Jeez, look at there, they heard him.
But one where the fantasy world is not another planet or alternate universe, but a world that is constructed in Senua's mind.
So that's the thing, I'm like...
But to do so would mean putting psychotic mental illness at the center of the experience.
That's kind of cool.
A subject that is still considered taboo,
Cool.
and a challenge that was both terrifying.
So again, it begs the question that any of this actually happened.
In Hellblade,
I
the
know,
starting
I'm like,
point was
okay.
a newly discovered Celtic goddess called Senua in Ashwell, Hertfordshire. When first discovered, her name was thought to be Senua, a name which I liked and kept. I wondered if Senua might have been a Celtic warrior like Boudica, who stood up to the Romans. While the Romans had conquered all of Europe, there was a group of Celts up in the furthest reaches of the Roman
that's
Empire
pretty.
that could not be conquered,
Yeah.
the Picts. And so the Romans built a wall, called Hadrian's Wall, that spans across Britain from sea to sea to keep the Pictish barbarians at bay. The Picts were known for their war paint, painted on with woad, and their matted hair clumped with lime. And so Senua would be a barbarian Pict in this image.
What's your name?
Back the fuck off, stranger danger, that's my name.
So they said they clumped hair. So are they saying that it really wasn't
Haven't seen
dreadlocks, or is it like this how they described the clumped
I
hair?
think that's just how they described it.
Oh, Zeno's daughter.
I mean, they're clearly dreadlocks.
Wait.
Well, yeah. Unless they just made it more
Orkney
like
is
that
off the
for the
coast of
game.
Scotland and was inhabited by the Picts, steeped in history and mystery, and so I made Orkney Senua's home and set the stage for a crisis. In the late 8th century, the first Vikings landed on the Orkney Islands. The population of the Picts crashed thereafter, replaced by the Norsemen of the 9th century. Were they wiped out? We don't know for sure, but it would seem likely given the reputation of the Vikings. The Northmen's brutality is legendary. High-ranking leaders and chieftains of the tribes they conquered were often offered as sacrifice to their gods.
That's what I'm saying. You know, it's like
most brutal of
the
these
Vikings were like
sacrifices
setting up
was
shop.
the bloody.
Yeah.
I imagine Senua as a young female warrior who returns home from exile to find her partner, Dillion, brutally sacrificed to a Norse god by these hellish warriors from a faraway
I guess
land.
that's why he was taken
Imagine
by
the horror
Hela,
of this
because he
moment.
was
Maybe.
sacrificed to an
Oh
god.
yeah. So I was like,
I didn't
what?
really pay attention to that, I guess,
Yeah.
before.
Well, I guess that's called the.
Were they just called Blood Eagle or something?
Yeah, remember they even did that in Vikings, where basically they rip open your back and they spread out your lungs from your back. That looks like wings. So that's why he didn't die and go to their afterlife. He was sent,
Got some kitty cat opinions
I
on
know.
this.
You know?
I came to learn that the Celts had a sophisticated and nuanced perspective on the nature of mental
Let's see what our
disorder.
kitty cat thinks about
One
this. What
term
do you think
they
about
use
this?
Gelt. A Gelt is a man
No,
or
she's not
woman
gonna
who has
talk.
been driven mad by a curse, battle trauma, or grief. A Gelt would take to a life in the woods in search of penance, punishment, and purgation. And so Senua became a Gelt, cursed by darkness, looking for redemption in the wilds.
Kitty cat's giving in-depth commentary. Yeah, see?
Another
Look!
word the
Look!
Celts
I
used in reference
fucking
to
told
others
you!
was
Live
the
action!
truth,
Hey.
or one who utters the words of God.
You could tell by the movement,
They tell
like...
of a mad
Yeah.
sinner who
It's
flees
just
battle
interesting
into
they did it
exile.
that way.
Well,
That's
it's
when he
cheaper.
first
Like,
saw
why...
Yeah.
Think
feathers
about
in
it.
his book.
You would have
A
to
character called Truth in Hellblade
animate
is
a
based on
whole
unknown person
nother
called Finda,
character,
an
you know what I mean?
8th century
Digitally. I
Irish
mean, look
Yeah.
how...
was captured
Look how
and
much
enslaved
detail
by
was on
Vikings.
her, you know what I
He
mean?
eventually escaped
Yeah,
to
see?
Orkney, where he became a
See, you
monk.
can see that...
Well, I was gonna say it's just hard to tell because sometimes, I mean, with when they do like the cinematics for her, it was really
Yeah, but look at the movement.
know.
Again, the greatest
So it's really cool they did it that way.
The
I
greatest
guess that's-
cinematics in video games look great. They look super real. But the second you put a real person next to it, you can see it. I remember when I was watching the first Guardians of the Galaxy, or watching the makings of, and they were talking about seeing like that dog that went up in space that disappeared, and the collector was going to have it. And the reason why they were actually hesitant to do it was because, well, they had Rocket, and Rocket has fur and everything, and they said Rocket looks great, but unfortunately there's still a degree of separation where if you were to
Jesus.
put a
So the
furry
stage was
CGI
set for a
animal
new
next to a
adventure,
real
journey into
furry,
Yeah.
real fur animal, you would see the difference right away. So that's why
Why
they
are
didn't
doing
do
the lines like that in her mouth?
probably to kind of show like the creases and like
It's interesting.
like the dried out of the
Usually
crack.
they just do the dots. It's always so cool to see how they do like mocap stuff.
To make a game about a warrior with psychotic mental illness as its central theme was fraught with danger.
And it's funny, you can look at these shots here, they don't look finished.
Yeah.
They don't look quite as detailed, even as the color looks a little bit more flat.
Yeah.
Yeah, these aren't finished shots.
And psychopathy associated
Was
with
that
the lack of
Nosferatu? Yeah.
It is unfortunate that these two words
Good
sound so
movie.
similar,
We own
but
it.
They are used interchangeably in media. I must admit that I didn't have to look very far to discover my own ignorance of the subject. So we reached out to Paul Fletcher, psychiatrist and professor of health neuroscience at University of Cambridge.
Psychosis is a descriptive term, and it refers to.
I wonder when guys like this, these should be like video games.
I know.
I'm wondering like, wow, like gaming has come that far.
Probably just glad somebody wants to talk to me. Somebody wants to bring attention to this.
Well, it's interesting too, but it's like video games now have become so sophisticated where you can do this kind of thing with a character, and you know what I mean, that it's like, and that the gaming is taken seriously enough where you would want to get it right. You know what I mean? Like when you have like experts on movies as like advisors for things and that. You know, video games are no longer a like, oh, it's just a throw, whatever, you just make it up. No, you take the video game just as serious as you would a movie or a book. So you get. I have books where there's a lot of science jargon and tech jargon, and you know the authors, you know, got advisors and they work with scientists and you know people in technology to make sure that all their facts are right. You know, they didn't just make it up because they want to. You know, you take it seriously. So it's kind of cool to see that games have reached a level of seriousness and sophistication where, yeah, if you're gonna have a character with mental illness, you can't just have them just bouncing off the walls like a crazy, you know, like a cartoon character. You have to treat it, you know, accurately. Not to mention, it'd be kind of offensive too a little bit if you just like, oh, she's crazy. Look at her depicting a stereotype of a, you know what I mean? It's like, no.
Look at her original outfit. She had a ponytail.
That could enrich and
Well, she has a
change the
ponytail
very
now.
nature
Well,
of the
it was a
game.
regular, not
dreaded.
dreaded ponytail.
Pleasure, thanks. It's really interesting for me.
It's funny because when I was looking for pictures to make the thumbnail for the videos, I saw some of these images and I thought it was fan art. I guess it was original footage.
Well, they might
like
not
that.
have done the dread ponytail yet, because obviously when you're gonna do dreadlocks, it's more details you have to animate.
Yeah.
So it's just for the initial, like, you know, like test raw, just to kind of test out. They probably just did a character model with just regular hair, just because it'd be easier to animate, because you have to animate those pretty much.
Experiencing their perspective.
Honestly, that's why they did it as a ponytail. because now it's more you animate it as
yeah.
more like one clump, one big object. Whereas if you look at
If we
it's
were
only
to
the
represent
ends.
Senua psychosis,
They have to
we
move.
would have to simulate voice hearing, a common attribute. But how can we simulate?
Because think about it,
something
if she
we
had her
haven't
hair down,
experienced?
you would have to animate
Professor
each
Charles
dreadlock
Ferney, a leading
individually.
expert in voice hearing from
Which,
Durham
granted, that would look
University,
fucking
offered
awesome,
his help.
but
Hearing voices is an experience that is usually associated with severe mental illness. And crucially, we know that hearing voices is a part of
It's a
ordinary life
interesting
for many people
microphone.
who don't meet the criteria for mental illness.
Yes. Oh, it's not him in real life.
We know voices vary according to where they appear in space. Voices can appear far away in the distance, they can appear right there in your ear, they can seem to be coming from inside your head.
Based on the information Professor Fernie
Oh, that's cool how they're doing
I
it.
put together a sound brief and
Yeah,
invited
that's what it
some
said. Is
actors
it's
to
like
the
2
studio.
microphones?
We recorded the actors using a binaural microphone, which records the 3D spatial position of sound, replicating the way sound is heard by human ears.
Is it
It
cold
gives
in
you an
there? They are
incredible
bundled
sense that
up.
the person you are listening to is right there beside you.
That's cool, all these little steps they have to do.
I know, that must have been
Rachel
fun.
I
Williams
know.
from the Voice Collective came to our studio with 2 young voice hearers to speak to our team. We talked at length about their experiences and they listened to our tests, giving us feedback on how we could improve on it.
Everyone hates her. She's cursed.
It's very hard.
Is that the
to
darkness?
represent what
Think so.
this
I'm
experience
also
is like.
about the effect, about
Partly
the
because
The
it's
dead.
such a personal, intense, emotional experience. It's testament to how Ninja Theory have been listening to what the researchers are saying, but also crucially listening to the experts by experience. What they've come up with is so compelling. It's by far the best representation I've heard of what these experiences are like.
yeah. You can see it's like the trailer, but you can see it's more raw. Even though we're saying that
Still looks really
there are games now where this is it. You know what I mean? This is what it would look like, and we wouldn't question it. It just shows you how good the game looks. Where it's like
I know.
we're looking at that now, like, oh, that's kind of the raw footage. We're like, are you kidding me? That's like every other game now looks like that.
Sometimes the visuals or what we're seeing is too much. It becomes more until eventually we practice exactly anything.
The people we spoke to, the stories they told were fascinating, harrowing and mind-boggling. The reality of what people experienced was vivid, far exceeding what I could possibly have imagined. We went away itching to represent some of these visions and flashbacks in the game.
My heart is so, love is so far away. Don't you know how I wanna feel deeper?
Yeah, some of the movement doesn't seem
Yeah.
as fluid. Yeah, they're probably well. They probably record. Thinking they were probably recording this before the game was done.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's probably one of those things too where they were like tweaking the game, you know, rendering it right at the release. Because think about it, it's a digital. It doesn't have a physical release, so they can keep tinkering with it right
Yeah.
up to the very end, basically. So. I love it. I just love the little frayed ends at the top of her head. It's so realistic to how dreadlocks look.
I know.
You never see that in games. They always look like you just stepped out of the salon. Like my dreads would only look that tight at the roots when I would get up from the chair when I was done getting them worked on, and they were just super tight. And I'm like, yeah, then they would look like that. But like after even just one night of sleeping on them, you'd already get the little frizzies on the ends, you know. And a lot of people, when you see people like in movies or like, you know, you see bands like in music videos and their dreadlocks are super tight, it's like, well, they probably got them done that day. Because I've seen those same people in bands on tour after they've been touring for a few days headbanging and they have all those frizzies.
Yeah.
So it's just cool that they represent. As it is, her dreadlocks still look too tight. They were still too perfect. They would have been a lot more
They said
ratty.
they were covered in lime, so I think it's supposed to be almost like, you know, on
The
them.
students that are involved in this project
Instead of obviously
are
like a
incredibly
hair gel
excited
type thing,
about
they
being
use or
involved.
mud. You know, they
have
use
described
that
the
to
experience.
kind
Yeah,
of
but they would
important
still.
because
They kind of punishment she was being put through, they would like.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, obviously they still wanted to be kind of aesthetically pleasing to look at.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad they gave those little touches around the roots where it's a little,
The experiences
you know,
described
it's a
by
little
the
rough
film
around the edges of the top.
are
You know,
beyond comprehension.
realistically they should be a lot rattier looking,
Who has to
but
live with an
they
angry
added
voice
that
screaming at her,
when I'm like, that's good
slamming
enough.
on
You know what I mean?
the doors
That's
of
an attention to detail that really impressed me.
And that's someone who would often
Not
see
even
angry
Horizon
faces
did
in
that.
films.
No, I was gonna say, remember when Horizon had this perfectly
Fucking double butts.
The panic and fear that
perfectly
comes with such
immaculate
visuals is
dreadlocks?
entirely
Yeah.
understandable, and it can be a living horror for some.
Worthless, weak, pathetic. Go on, feel sorry for yourself, because there's no one left to do that for you.
I was urged by one fellow that we should not shy away from showing this horror, and so I was perpetually torn in making Hellblade. Had we gone too far with our representations, or not far enough?
Growth and love. Just like your soul.
Her gum's almost like black there.
In some ways, voice hearing and visions were the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. There's another aspect of psychosis that is much harder to explain, but one that I think video games are uniquely able to represent, which are often called delusions.
People begin to see patterns in the world. They begin to link things that most people wouldn't link. Most of the things that we might think would be coincidence or, you know, not worth commenting on. Nevertheless, that might have a particular salience or importance to them.
One individual.
There's that damn bridge!
Everyday words, sounds, colours, and objects were steeped in meaning to him, forming a strange and sinister puzzle that he was determined to solve but could not quite get to the bottom of.
It's not just brain dysfunction. It's not like the system shut down. It's actually an incredibly creative process. The person creates a world populated with voices and phantasms and terrors, and they're completely immersed.
It's just interesting because, again, it's almost like, let's say
We
the
often
world
invite
of this
people into the
quote-unquote
studio to
crazy
play the
person,
game. In
you
one of
know,
our
they
playthroughs,
don't fit in our world, but
we
it's, if you could, like, reverse engineer a world around them, then immediately they'd become sane, because everything would make sense.
There are many things
And it seems
that
that's
happen in the
essentially what
world
she
of
did.
Hellblade that make perfect
Like, that's what
sense
her
in the
hell is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The dark rot
It's a
that's
world
coming
that makes
slowly
sense
from
to
above,
her,
the
but
secret
for the
rooms of
world to
dark
actually be able to make
heart.
sense to her, the
And
world
strange
has to basically
associations
kind of be
exist
hell, you know what I mean?
in
So the only world that
To complete
she can
Senua's
be
quest,
normal
we
in
have
is
to
kind of a,
internalize
you know,
and accept the
terrible
logic
world, you know what I mean?
needs to progress.
And that's why it's hell.
Afterwards, they
He's
said
got an
that they
intense,
didn't see much evidence of
braided
mental illness in
upper
the game.
ponytail.
Yeah.
People with delusions of all sorts would argue the same thing, that they are not aware of their experience being abnormal in any way.
I need a sword. It's important.
Representing perception changes and thinking patterns within Hellblade gives us a set of symptoms common in psychosis. But people with lived experience were keen to emphasize another point, that it is wrong to define a person by their symptoms. Quite often, the illness comes not from the symptoms, but from the stigma, isolation, and mistreatment that comes about from the rest of society.
They say that I'm cursed. What if they're right?
I needed someone to portray Senua, someone who could believably internalize her suffering.
They're going to talk about the actress here.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Melina Jurgens, our video editor, had been a stand-in for Senua over a few months while we perfected our motion capture techniques. Without realizing it, she had already auditioned for the role, and I knew her well enough to know that I
It's
couldn't
weird
help
seeing the
but
face there.
to relive her own internal pain.
Because again,
As
it's
often is
like,
the case, those who are
she's got like
suffering from
long
depression
blonde
or
hair.
It's so weird to see it from a low angle like that. It's because of the forced perspective of
Yeah.
the face.
My hope is that by creating a compelling
Good for
and
her.
inspirational
I know, it's kind of
character,
ironic that she was
Senua
video
feels very
editor
much real,
and the main
albeit in a
character.
fantasy setting.
Well, it's like she's not even an
Provided
actor
lens
then,
into
in
her
theory,
reality,
right?
A different one to
I guess
yours.
not,
And
but
this is where storytelling comes into play. I imagined her life based on common threads in real people's lives. She was always prone to psychosis as a child. Her mother Galena also
see?
had voices and had visions, so perhaps there was a
Again,
genetic
it's
aspect.
it's just
Perhaps it
the
was
irony
that
is,
was the green screen we had,
without
I
science.
think.
yeah. Again, it just shows you like some of the cheapest.
I know. But because of the way
they filtered it, yeah,
edited it, yeah.
exactly. It's like it's a really
That's so funny.
inexpensive solution.
I thought for sure they were just models that were really well motion captured, but you're
yeah,
right.
but you
What's the
can't
point?
like you can tell like again when you put them next to somebody like that, you can tell. But they hit it. I'm not saying it took me out of the game. I could tell, but it wasn't like what's that because they hit in such a way and it's such a genius way of because think about it,
it fits right in with the gameplay,
and it would make the game more expensive. But because they're out of focus, it's like again, why spend more money when we can just? I mean, yeah, you have to pay the actor, but it's still cheaper in the long run. They having to digitally animate a whole nother. It's like in movies when they need to have like a duplicate of a character. I'm like, yeah, you could just do a split screen or a digital mock-up or copy of the person, or you could just cast identical twins. And they still do that nowadays. And have watched commentaries of Moon. They say, well, how did you do this effect shot? How did you split it up? And you're like, we didn't. We just cast twins.
Especially developing Senua's character.
There's a friend of you guys are familiar with Terminator 2. I mean, the director's cut has more parts, but the end where T-1000 impersonating Sarah Connor, the Laura John Conrad, then the real Sarah Connor shows up behind her. Well, Linda Hamilton has an identical twin, so what do? They just had her twin dress up like her character and then had him in the shot, and there you go. And they still do that nowadays. So, I don't know, sometimes I think we get very caught up in what we can do with technology, and sometimes we forget that the cheapest and simplest ways sometimes might be the best.
Use our lived experience in a very creative way. There's nothing tokenistic about the work we've put in. It feels like we've been listened to, things have been taken on board, and I think there was a lot of realism in the game itself, and it feels very authentic.
Hellblade will give people a good experience of what it's like to hear voices and have those experiences. I'm glad that the guys at Ninja Theory have asked us to come along and help them build an experience that's positive when it comes out, and get myself a copy and have a go.
I think all the way through, I was really inspired by how the conversations have translated into the game in a way that I think I didn't imagine was possible. So wonderful, really wonderful.
I'm still hoping they're gonna kind of explain.
Yeah.
I really hope that others will follow the lead they've set and use the power of something like a video game to change people's perceptions, to increase understanding, and ultimately to make some of the stigma around voice hearing and other experiences go away.
For me, it was really exciting to see something that I explore scientifically being represented so beautifully in a character who's trying to penetrate the mysteries of the environment in which they've been placed, with all of this strange uncertainty and noise and conflicting information that they're getting. I'm very excited by this way of trying to represent
because I know, again,
mental illness, because
most people complain it's too much like a movie already, but I'm like, this would make a really good movie.
Pure scientific experience.
I know, but it really is like a
quite an empathic view of what it might be like.
Mental illness has been with us for as long as we have been on this planet. But why? Why hasn't evolution stamped out this weakness from within our gene pool? I often pondered this question until I realized that the question had an inbuilt flaw. It assumes that being and thinking differently is a weakness. The only reason we have computers, spacecraft, medicine, poetry, art, and yes, even video games is because individuals are able to simulate new abstract realities in their minds and share them with the rest of us. We need people to be willing to see differently in order for us to progress and survive as society.
Some of that early gameplay
and
there.
we need to be open to these new ways of seeing.
Yeah.
And it is this spirit that motivated me to create Senua's story and share it with you.
That just looks like a photo.
I know. That was really good quality. Look at all that detail.
I know.
And normally that'd be like concept art photo.
I guess that's the end, so.
Well. So I don't know. I guess they made it sound like there might be a sequel, so fingers crossed. But anyway, I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
so.
same here. I definitely liked it. And hopefully.
And even if they don't make a sequel to this game, I would hope maybe the studio would make more games like this, kind of visually very great looking game, but kind of
narrative driven.
Yeah, and also kind of interesting narratives. Like again, like how this had an interesting angle. It was a hero's journey, but because of her psychosis, it completely changed the nature in which the game is played and perceived. So I would like maybe to see more. Maybe that can become their thing, like be taking these really creative approaches to kind of a tried and true story, but like with an interesting kind of angle. So I don't know. I liked it. I was happy with it.
Me too.
Good. We hope you guys are all happy with it too. Whether you play the game yourself, or just watch this played, and if you just watch this played, give it a shot yourself. You might enjoy it.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for sticking with us, guys. We will see you on the next one.
Peace.